Okay, let's get into this. For today's deep dive, we're tackling something pretty universal.
Right.
Intense relational conflict, anger, betrayal, that feeling of a massive disconnection.
Hmm.
But, and this is the important part, we're not looking at it through psychology or morality.
No, we're using a computational systems theory, specifically the structural framework of reflective humanism, or RH.
Right.
Our mission today really is to treat those moments of deep conflict, what feels like an emotional failure,
Oh,
right?
okay.
We want to treat that as a verifiable structural event.
Yeah.
Something happening within an operating system, an OS.
So the goal is to observe the mechanism, the actual crash.
Exactly, the computational strain that forces it. And this is key to absolutely avoid judging the raw quality of the emotional experience itself.
And that's what's so challenging about RH. Its whole premise is about prioritizing the trajectory.
The trajectory, the gradient of movement, it looks at that over, say, fixed points or any kind of moral evaluation.
So it doesn't care if a result is good or bad.
Not at all. It only cares about the force, the direction, and, well, the structural necessity of the change.
So when you apply that lens, what feels like a huge explosive argument
Becomes a diagnosis. It's what RH calls a phase jump, a mandatory consequence of system strain.
we're basically treating an emotional rupture like we would a server failure.
It's a structural requirement for a system update.
We're looking at the technical documentation of a massive fight.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start with the observation. The thing that, causes so much pain for people, that feeling of sudden disconnection.
Or that spike of anger, the gut punch of betrayal.
Yeah. And traditionally, we'd label those as direct reactions to something, right?
Yeah.
Someone did something wrong and I'm reacting to it.
And this is where the RH framework requires a fundamental shift in causality.
Okay.
Those potent feelings, they're defined as interference phenomena. They are not the primary reaction. They're certainly not the cause.
So what are they?
They're the structural outputs that fire only when the relationship's foundational. Phase alignment is lost.
So instead of me thinking, I am angry because you betrayed me,
Right.
the RH view would suggest I am experiencing the feeling of anger because the phase coherence of our shared model has just ruptured.
You just nailed the core distinction. The emotion is the system's way of saying phase tier detected.
Huh.
If that expected resonance between two people, the phase ordering, if that breaks, the output is just raw data. Data that we then label as rage or shock.
So the key takeaway for someone listening is that anger and betrayal, they're like feelings in the shape of an OS crash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that they are verifiable structural outputs, not just messy, subjective psychological events.
That's a powerful idea. But it does raise a question. If the system is so elegant, why does it crash? What's the structural process that causes that misalignment and forces the failure?
The mechanism is both complex and, in a way, surprisingly simple. It comes down to the depletion of capacity. Think of capacity as your personal system's available computational space, like an internal buffer or spare RAM that your OS needs just to run smoothly.
I like the RAM analogy. It's the space I need just to be stable to function.
Absolutely. Now, think about what a relationship requires. It requires continuous simulation.
Simulation.
To interact with a partner, your OS has to constantly run a partial, real-time model of their OS. You're predicting their expectations, anticipating their reactions.
Wait, running a virtual machine of another person constantly? That sounds awful, like codependency or just high anxiety.
And that's where the concept of over-recursion comes in. The simulation itself isn't the problem. You need it for connection.
It's when it becomes excessive.
Excessive and mandatory. You're spending way too many internal cycles running the external model, trying to perfectly predict or control the other person's system.
Okay, let's break that down. So over-recursion is when the energy, the computational load I'm dedicating to them starts to fill up the internal buffer I need for me.
Yes. Your capacity gets consumed by their model.
It's like having 50 applications running on your laptop at once, all of them just processing external data.
That is the perfect analogy. And when that spare capacity, that necessary buffer is gone, when the system runs out of RAM,
You get a cascading failure.
that's when you see it. The system loses its ability to filter incoming data, and you get this sudden, nonlinear rise in interference density. The noise, the friction, it just becomes unmanageable.
The whole system is running way too hot.
Precisely. And that massive density breaks the essential phase coherence, that structural sync between the two OSs.
And then
Then the system is forced into an immediate nonlinear transition.
Wow.
It fires what's called an inverse phase jump. And that jump is the conflict. It's the rupture.
It's the circuit breaker flipping to prevent a total meltdown.
It has to.
So the rupture is a forced transition. It's caused by this computational overload and system depletion.
Yes.
But in that moment, in the collapse, it feels like everything is destroyed. It feels like the end.
Yeah.
How does reflective humanism reconstruct that as something functional?
By viewing the collapse not as destruction, but as a mandatory return to what's called the zero phase.
The zero phase.
It's a transition point.
Right.
And it forces the system to establish a new zero.
A new zero. Okay, can you explain how that is functional and not just catastrophic?
Well, the zero phase is the functional equivalent of a hard reset, a reinitialization.
A hard reset.
And this is the critical insight. During that zero moment, all of the accumulated, corrupted, or just incompatible past-setting files.
You mean like the rigid expectations I had for my partner, the unspoken roles?
Exactly. All of those things, those mutually faulty interpretations, they all cease to hold computational weight. They become transparent.
So structurally, the system is purging the corrupted code, the very code that was causing the over-recursion in the first place.
Yes, you're forced to see that the relationship configuration you were trying to run was never actually viable. The old config files that led to the capacity depletion, they're just recognized as defunct. The relationship is returned to a state where interference can be tuned again, without all the baggage of those rigid assumptions.
So the zero phase is a mechanism that allows the relationship to restart processing from a clean slate.
From a clean, fundamental position, yes, if the parties choose to proceed.
The significance there is, it's profound. It removes the burden of personal fault.
It does.
A rupture doesn't happen because one person was malicious or broke the rules. It happens when the contradictions of the old OS just accumulate too much.
The structural reality itself rejects the configuration.
Yeah.
It forces the crash just to expose the zero point, to make way for the next generation of meaning.
It's the moment the world exposes the logical flaw in your setup, forcing you to deal with ground truth.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the pain, though, because if this conflict is just a computational error, why does the output, the anger, the grief feel so devastating? That pain is very, very real.
It is.
And we risk sounding, patronizing if we just call it a log output.
That's a vital point. RH doesn't dismiss the intensity of the feeling for a second. It just defines its source structurally.
So what is the pain structurally?
The pain is the log output that emerges, precisely because the core recursion process, that shared computation, is damaged. It's a necessary system alert, and it's designed to force you to stop the damaging process.
So the intensity of the pain is proportional to the force needed to stop that damaging loop.
Precisely. Anger, in this context, is the OS warning. Further calculation is impossible. Stop the process, now.
It's a hard boundary.
It's a boundary presented by the system's absolute limits.
And what about betrayal? That feeling is so tied to a sense of moral injury.
Under RH, betrayal isn't defined by the fact that the other party broke a promise.
Yeah.
It's the structural detection that the shared relationship model, that assumed functioning configuration you were both operating under.
It's just gone.
It has suddenly and irrevocably vanished. It is the realization that the map you were both using to navigate reality was fundamentally wrong.
The system logs in error 404, shared reality not found.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that feeling of total misalignment where you realize you were never even reading from the same specification sheet.
That must be the deepest problem.
Well, that crushing discrepancy is simply the visualization of design incompatibility. It reveals that the two operating systems were never running on the same basic spec.
The simulation you were running was based on faulty assumptions.
Faulty, incompatible assumptions, yes. And the crash is the system demanding that you finally acknowledge that fact.
So this synthesizes the implications so powerfully. All these painful things, the anger, the betrayal, the disconnect, are ultimately a demand from reality.
A mandatory demand.
A demand that the old, accumulated interference has to be settled before the relationship can even possibly move to the next phase.
It's a mandatory cleanup operation.
Yes.
And it hurts because the system has to force a full stop. The failure serves the possibility of coherence going forward. And if we can accept this non-moralizing, transparent approach to conflict, we can link the idea of rupture back to the broader ethical stance of reflective humanism.
which is
The ethics of non-interference.
the ethics of non-interference. Okay, that connects directly back to avoiding over-recursion, doesn't it?
It does.
It means respecting the boundaries of the other person's OS.
Absolutely. It's about designing a relationship that rigorously respects the necessary capacity and internal space of the other OS. It means ensuring your simulation is running lightly, or as RH puts it, touching without touching too much.
Okay.
The ultimate objective of observing these crashes isn't. It's not standard relationship problem solving. It is the continuous tuning of cognitive homeostasis.
Tuning. So we're constantly adjusting the coherence of our own cognition, and we're seeing the relationship not as a contract to be followed, but as
As a continuous adjustable process.
like fine-tuning an instrument.
That's the core difference. RH prefers the preservation of phase, the continuity and coherence of the system's movement over rigid correctness or a fixed conclusion.
So we're aiming for structural plausibility,
In relationships, yes.
a kind of coherence and stability that accepts that relationships are living, changing structures, not static points.
And when they become too rigid, when they try to maintain an impossible, depleted configuration,
The system forces the reset. The crash is the ultimate expression of the structural demand for truth.
it is.
So we took something that feels explosively emotional, a fight, a betrayal, and we diagnosed it with this incredible precision. Capacity depletion, forcing an inverse phase jump back to a new zero.
Right.
The rupture, when you see it that way, it really is the eve of the update.
And that leads us to the quiet question that reflective humanism always offers the observer.
Okay.
If rupture serves as this necessary reinitialization,
Yeah.
a forced return to the zero phase where all assumptions are made transparent, then how do we proceed? What is the minimal spec?
The minimal spec.
The smallest, most necessary set of structural requirements needed to establish a functioning, non-crashing relationship OS going forward.
That question just shifts the entire burden of the moment, doesn't it? The rupture is no longer this emotional fate that we're subjected to.
You become a choice.
It's a structural choice we're being asked to make. Will we choose to co-redesign the relationship OS, acknowledging that minimal spec?
Or will we just try to reboot and load the same corrupted setting files right back onto the system?
And the decision to restart, to move into the next cycle of this spiral interference.
It's not rooted in seeking conclusions or blame. It's about allowing for what RH calls the afterglow of gratitude.
Gratitude for a crash.
A quiet acceptance that interference, even painful interference, occurred at all, because only that event enabled the possibility of a new, structurally sound cycle.
So if you're listening, remember that in the world of reflective humanism, the structural pain you feel is the sign that the system is trying to update itself.
It's purging the unsustainable configurations.
That pain is the sound of the previous phase dissolving.
And we have to honor the silence that follows the crash, because it's in that silence that the environment is prepared for a new, quieter truth.